Hey everyone, welcome. Today I'm joined by Rob Schmidt. We're going to be discussing Wrong Turn and also, like some other horror stuff as well, of course, because it'll eventually get to that. How's it going? And welcome.
Good, thanks. Thanks for welcoming me. Looking forward to your questions.
Yeah. So, how did you originally get the opportunity to work on Wrong Turn? Like, how did it come about? What sort of drew you to it?
Yeah, well, I have a real I have a complicated relationship to horror. Before the show, we were talking about Texas Chainsaw 2, and
Yeah.
uh, you thought it was a comedy, and I said I was really terrified by it. You know what I didn't tell you was that I was so terrified by it that I decided it was evil, and I decided that horror films were evil, and that they shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And for a few years, I felt that way about them. And yeah, and I used to go running at night in New York, and to keep myself going, I would imagine uh, the girl from The Exorcist chasing me. Like that was that was how I would exercise. Um,
Yeah.
so so I'd always had a relationship to horror, and then after I made a movie called Crime and Punishment in Suburbia, I told my agent I wanted to make a horror film, and I started looking at scripts and meeting on them, and Wrong Turn was the one that I got excited about. So that
Yeah.
was that was how it happened. There's a longer version, but that's basically how it happened.
Yeah. Gosh, that running thing, I need to start doing that when I go to the gym and I'm on the treadmill. I need to just think like there's someone right behind me chasing me
Oh,
just
that's
to really
awesome.
get the blood pumping and stuff. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that.
yeah. So, when you first read the script, like, what were your initial thoughts, like, with like the story and like how it would work as like a movie and everything?
Yeah, honestly, it's a very simple script. It's a body count movie with a bunch of young people in the woods. The cannibals are interesting, but they're definitely there have been things like them before. Um, and yeah, I didn't know this at the time, but there's even an X Files episode called, I think it's called The Family or something like that, that is like very similar to the cannibals in Wrong Turn. But when I read it, what I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, yeah, yeah. When I read it, what I thought was that it's like I like sushi, like that Japanese food sushi, the raw fish. And
Yeah.
it's a very simple food, it's just like a slice of fish with some wasabi, like mustard and rice, right? But it can be awesome. It can be like in some ways it's my favorite thing to eat, in the world. And that's kind of the way I thought of Wrong Turn, that it's super simple, and you just if you execute it right, then people can enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that was yeah, and that was honestly the way I felt about it. It was it's not like God, I'm forgetting the name of it, the Bruce Willis movie I See Dead People. It's not like a really I can't remember what it's called. It's
Sixth
anyway,
Sense.
yeah, The Sixth Sense. It's not like a movie with a really complicated plot thing in it. It's literally just a body count movie. But if you
Yeah.
if you make it well, then people can go to the theater with their friends, with their date, and have like a really good time watching it. And that's kind of what the idea was.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely enjoy this movie. It's one of my like movies where I have like a lot of horror movies where like sometimes I'll just come home from college and I'll just be like, right, I'll put something on and just like enjoy just a horror movie, and I'll put say like, okay, well, what is there? There's like Texas Chainsaw, Wrong Turn, Scream, so I'll just pick through them. Um, and one of the things which I like about Wrong Turn in particular is like the setting. It's so cool. Like how did like you like go about capturing like especially like some like the isolation about like the wilderness and like West Virginia and stuff.
Yeah, there were some really interesting things about that I learned from some really cool people I worked with. Oh, by the way, before I get into that though, I wanted to address the thing you said about there's a bunch of people that have talked to me about movies like Wrong Turn being sort of like comfort food that you can watch
Yeah,
them yeah, that you can watch them a bunch of times and like you just like you know what's going to happen, but it's sort of fun and you like feel comfortable. Like yeah, it's like comfort food, you know, it's like eating mashed potatoes or something. Or like
yeah,
the ice cream bar I had before. Um, yeah, but in terms of the setting, there were a few things. The production designer, she's worked on a bunch of horror films. She's really great. Alicia Kewan um, really helped to create that world, and she had a real love of. She has a real love of creating spaces, you know, and she was super sweet about the cabin. Like I would go to
yeah,
Yeah, I would go to flea markets sometimes when we were in pre-production, just find weird stuff, you know. Not a lot, just little things. And she would take them and admire them and then put them, you know, in the cabin, which was full
yeah.
of hundreds and hundreds of things like that, you know. Um, and building that type of world is something that Alicia's really great at. And then in terms of the forest, there were a few things. One was that Don Carmody, the producer, one of the producers, I should say, there were a lot of producers, but Don was really instrumental in the film. He he said that a tree is a tree. It doesn't matter where you film it because no one will care. Like he didn't mean that in a bad way. He meant that they're going to pay attention to what's going on with the characters and what their goals are, and they're not going to spend as much time looking at the background. So, like, if you shoot a tree twice, it's not gonna. People aren't going to be like, "Hey, that's the same tree they shot last time," you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, which was interesting because like, most of that movie is actually shot in a city park in Toronto. You know, like it's literally like
yeah.
we painted out skyscrapers from the background of the cabin. I don't know if you knew that, but there were literally like skyscrapers in the background in that wide shot, and we just painted them out. Um,
I didn't know that. That's actually really cool.
oh, yeah. So it's just about like creating the space and believing in it, you know. And then a thing that you know, and by the way, I got scared sometimes and didn't believe in the space. And Alicia, the stuff that happens on the treetops, like we built a forest on a soundstage, you know, and so that the actors could like walk across the branches and things like that.
Yeah,
And I got into a fight with Alicia because I didn't think the trees looked realistic. And like I literally, I don't think I made her cry because she's a pretty tough lady, but I feel like I need to apologize now to Alicia if she was
yeah,
offended by my insecurity. But I was telling her that the trees didn't look. Actually, she was very aggressive in her defense of the way the trees that she built looked. And then about a month after we finished shooting, I was driving through a forest and I stopped. I stopped because the trees looked a lot like the trees in Wrong Turn, and they were exactly like them. Like she was right and I was wrong, you know. But it
yeah,
was that, yeah. But you know what it was? It was that we weren't in a forest. We were on a sound stage, you know, and the light wasn't
yeah,
moonlight. It was like fake lights, and I got scared. I got scared that people wouldn't believe it was real, you know. But the thing is, when when someone's telling me a story, if I like the story, I'm gonna believe, you know. Like
yeah,
even if it was like a cartoon with stick figures, if it's a good story, I'll believe it, you know. And this, you know, we had much more than like a cartoon with stick figures. So that was a real lesson.
yeah.
That yeah, really good lesson.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like the cabin earlier, and I mean, I love like the insides of like the cabin while watching this, like just like the jar with like the like the jaws inside and everything.
Mhm.
Like it's really like interesting, like the like attention to detail in there.
Yeah, it's that sequence, it feels very almost like hallucinogenic to me, like when they're wandering around the cabin, because you
Yeah,
kind of know that this stuff is fucked up, you know, but you're for some reason you're
yeah,
not like rushing. You just kind of get lost and like this is so weird. Why is there a bowl of teeth, you know? Like uh
yeah,
yeah, it and the sound becomes distorted during that too, just a little bit distorted because it's the idea was to make it feel like they've kind of gone into trances, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
we were very
we were
lucky.
talking about like we were talking about like Texas Chainsaw Massacre earlier. So did like the Sawyer house have like any inspiration to that like cabin in the film?
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. You know, a thing that I heard about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and also I've heard it about a movie. Have you seen Cannibal Holocaust?
Yeah,
Okay, so a thing I heard about both of those films is that one of the reasons that they're so disturbing is because like the people that made them seem disturbed. Like you're not just watching a scene, you're like whoever made this scene is really damaged, you know? And
yeah,
and that's scary. Like the person who made the scene is scary. And that was I think a like a that was a powerful part of Texas Chainsaw. And um I don't know that there's a way to reproduce that, but definitely that vibe from Texas Chainsaw is one of the things that um, you know we were trying to conjure in Wrong Turn, is to be in that type of space. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But you know, and Texas Chainsaw does that perfectly. It does it perfectly, but it does it accurately. Like I grew up in the country, and I live in the country now. You know, I live like there's shotgun shells like scattered on my property from people, you know, hunting here and whatnot. And um, it's not so different than that, you know,
yeah,
in a lot of ways. Like it's just the country is really strange and bloody and visceral, you know. So
yeah. But so the antagonists in the movie that I love their designs. So like how like involved were you with design like their looks and sort of like how like each of them are sort of different?
yeah. Okay. So the writer Alan McElroy wrote them as different, as distinct characters, which was great. And then really the driving force behind them, you know, was of course Stan Winston and Shane McGahan. Shane, why am I forgetting? Mc, Shane Mahan. Sorry,
Yeah,
Shane, don't hate me. But Stan's right hand man, who runs Legacy, you know, effects now, Shane. I'm not gonna say your last name and slaughter it again, but um, yeah, they put like 95% of what is that character design into those characters. Um, and Shane, I mean, Shane had relationships with people that were like very special people, like people that were deformed or had special acrobatic skills or were, you know, interesting sizes and shapes. Well, just because his life was making, you know, characters in films, and physically having to make them so they could be filmed. And so he had all these relationships with different people, and then they have sculptors and painters, and they have like a whole hair department, you know, to just design hair for creatures and things like that. And it's
yeah,
really it's like a full size factory for creating characters, you know. And
yeah,
we were blessed with that because of Stan.
yeah. I mean the designs are great, and I love the performances of each of them because they're all like different in themselves as well. Like one of them, I can't remember the name of it, but like it's it's the one with the longer hair, and
Three
I love how
Finger.
he's just like, yeah, three things. He's just like really giddy and just like happy about like just hunting these people down.
Yeah, there's a thing about that that might be fun to know, which is that Julian. Oh, Julian, what's your last name? In any case, the actor who played that, he had worked really hard with the other two guys to make them be a family, where he was the mom and Sawtooth was the dad, and like this weird incestuous, all male family, and
Yeah,
the laugh that Three Finger does, he the producers wanted him not to do that. Like the in the field when he did that, they got upset about that. It stressed them out because they thought it was silly, And that's kind of that thing about comedy and horror, or laughter and horror, that like Three Finger laughing there, you know. I defended that when we were filming, and thankfully Julian also. He didn't know that they didn't want him to do it. So I guess I managed to protect him. But uh, on when the movie opened up on opening night, we were watching it with a bunch of like just kids that were out on a Friday night, and kids in the theater started doing Three Fingers laugh. Just if there was a quiet moment in the film, they'd go ha 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 ha, and make the noises that Three Finger
yeah,
made. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. These people are like getting to scare each other in the theater with the laughter, you know.
yeah. Um, so were there any like challenges that you guys faced like during the production? Like were there like any like major like issues with like filming like nature, weather, or something like that?
Oh, yeah, there were plenty of those. There was poison ivy. There was Desmond Harrington. He This kind of blows my mind. Is He was complaining about his ankle, and he said that he had twisted his ankle or whatever. And I thought he was just complaining. Um, I thought he was just complaining. And then at the end of the day, I was like, Desmond, I want to do one more take of this. And he was like, just one more. And like he snapped at me, and I was like, Desmond, you okay? And he was like, yeah, man, it's just my ankle is really swollen. And he lifted his pants up, and his ankle was twice as thick as his shoe. Like it was hanging, his ankle like was literally swollen up so much it was hanging over the sides of his shoe. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
like so that was really terrifying. And Emmanuel dislocated his shoulder actually during a stunt when she's jumping out of the tree. Her shoulder popped
yeah,
out of its socket, you know, which was super disturbing. And what other were there other weather things, weather or nature things? Mm, no, not really, not really. Besides, just like it's harder to shoot outside. It's tiring to shoot outside, and
yeah,
the spaces had distances between them, so you'd have to run, or you shouldn't run, but I would run from like one, set to another, and but it was good. It was like a summer shoot. It was kind of like the right type of movie to shoot during the summer, I think.
yeah. So, well, looking back at the movie, is there a particular scene or sequence that you're like particularly proud of with this movie?
Boy, you know, I like uh, I like the moment at the end when Eliza and Desmond are in the car together and they're okay. Like, I mean, I I've made some terrible movies and some good movies, and but I love all of them, and so
Yeah,
it's like having children. You love all your children. Um, but yeah, the moment between them in the car, I really like. I like the treetops. I like the cabin. I like the battle at the end. I I don't like the rock climbing sequence at the beginning because I really fucked up the production on that, and I don't especially like the Three Finger is still alive after the credits, you know.
Yeah,
But whatever, they wanted that so that they could make sequels, or they thought they needed that so they could make sequels. So,
yeah,
and it's sort of, and in hindsight, it's actually sort of fun. Like audiences like when the titles, you know, disappear and the trooper shows up. So I should just shut up about that one.
yeah.
Uh,
But so w- well, um, so how do you feel about like the concept of like, I guess like backwards horror, where like there's just like these like cannibals like going out and going to murder and eat people. What do you think like makes that so effective and also like terrifying for audiences?
yeah. Well, we're scared of nature, you know, just human beings are scared of nature. And that's like a really, that's from back when, you know, toddler Neanderthals would like leave the cave, you know, like the wilderness has been dangerous since probably before we were human beings. And so we feel it in our bones, you know. It's so in some
Yeah,
ways it's easy to make horrors there, you know.
yeah, and I mean, Wrong Turn became a franchise. It's had multiple sequels and also a reboot. How do you feel about like how the series evolved over the years?
um, you know, it's really nice. The way I feel about it, I was when Wrong Turn 2 was going to be made, the studio and the executives, you know, they were just trying to make money, I guess. But I was really disappointed that they didn't have Stan and I. They did something shady, which was we had contracts to uh, make a theatrical sequel, you know, and so they decided not to make a theatrical, to make a straight to DVD, I guess, because it was cheaper and they thought they would make more money. They thought there
Yeah,
was more return on investment making a cheaper movie and you know having it go straight to DVD, and that was really disappointing for me because I felt like we'd worked really hard and we'd made something good, and I had hoped to make more of it, you know. Um, but I
yeah,
like that. Yeah, yeah. But I've been really pleased that you know Wrong Turns has so much life, and it's so nice to you know anywhere I go in the world, there'll be people that have seen it and enjoy it, and that's super fun. I just did a music video a couple of weeks ago in Naples in Italy, and the band you know they knew and liked Wrong Turn, and it's fun to have made something like that, you know. So
yeah. Well, I
I
mean,
recommend you do. I
so
recommend
like,
you do it.
yeah. So if you were at any point to revisit Wrong Turn like today or at some point in the future, how would you approach like a sequel or a reboot or something?
Hmm. Boy, you know, it feels like Eliza would need to go back. Like I think that would be a way to start it would be for them to go back because I think when people are traumatized by something, going back to deal with it is a really interesting thing to do to try to like fix themselves. So I can't come up with a whole
Yeah,
storyline here while we're on, but I think that would be interesting to me to see happen. You know.
yeah. So You mentioned earlier, like that you sort of thought originally you thought horror movies were like evil and everything. So
Evil.
are you now a horror fan yourself? If so, like what is your favorite like horror movie?
Yeah, you know, I don't think I can. There are like I've seen like a million different movies of different types of movies. Like I went to
Yeah,
film school for undergrad and then film school for grad school, and like I just spent a lot of years looking at movies, and I like all kinds of movies, and um, like among my favorite movies are horror films. We were talking about Hostel before, and I haven't seen that movie since it was in theaters, but I got a lot of pleasure out of seeing it. But I don't think I can say I'm not a horror fan in that it's not the only thing I look at, or it's not the only thing I think is
yeah,
special. Yeah, but I'll tell you. Oh, this is another great thing that Alicia did is when we were talking, I had talked about Jaws and Alien, the original Alien, with Sigourney Weaver, and Jaws, where Roy Schneider, Steven Spielberg movie, and that I wanted Wrong Turn to feel like those. And she got those two posters and put them up in the production office. So those two posters were up for us to like think about how do you make like a horror film. And there's this really old director who actually made Amityville Horror. Stuart Rosenberg was he was
yeah,
like yeah, he was a mentor of mine, and he had this phrase from back when people just only watched movies in movie theaters. He said he would say, "You want to make a real good you want to make a real good Saturday afternoon at the movies movie." And like I don't know about you, but I know totally what that means. It's like you have a day off and you go to the movies in the afternoon and you watch something and you just disappear into it and it's awesome. And
yeah.
that was what I was trying to make Wrong Turn be, was like a real good Saturday afternoon at the movies movie, you know.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming out here and talking with me about Wrong Turn, just
Yeah,
horror.
man.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pleasure. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having me.